All right, another edition of Riding Home. Dean Legge, Matt DeBerry, Ryan Curley. We're going to go with this one. When did you have the biggest doubt about Kirby Smart as the head coach at Georgia? So this can be, look at these lights. How about that? This can be at any moment during the tenure or even before. I can't really recall your situation with Kirby when he got hired or before that.
Well, I think the first one that comes to mind is the South Carolina game in 2019 that they just should not have lost.
Okay.
That was a game I don't think anyone expected them to lose. They just came out flat.
Yeah.
Couldn't catch the ball.
Strange.
One particular receiver, Jake Fromm, did not play well.
That's what happens.
The one thing we go back to with Kirby Smart, and it seems like it's been year after year, maybe not this year, is the quarterbacks. Can he pick the right guy? Can he develop the right guy? Can he stay with the right guy? We saw it. We didn't see it his first year because Jacob Eason was the guy.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Jake Fromm had to come in when he was injured in year 2 in 2017, and it was Fromm for 3 years. And then we had 2020. Dwan Mathis starts the season, makes it one half of the season before Stetson comes in.
Half of the game.
And then it's Stetson, JT, kind of back and forth. And then last year was more Stetson and JT again. So there's always talk about the quarterbacks, and that's been the narrative from, I think, other fan bases across the country. Well, Kirby can't figure out the quarterback, but it seems like that's, he did the job last year. He got it right.
The short answer for you is the Carolina game?
That would be the short answer.
The
That's when the first time I said, man,
I don't know.
I don't know if this, because that was inexcusable. It really was. They should not have lost that game, and he hasn't lost a game like that since.
No, he hasn't. Ryan?
That was my knee-jerk reaction, too. I was in the student section that game.
Okay.
And it was ridiculous.
Carolina
ridiculous.
could not move the ball.
It just felt like something was really, really wrong that day.
There was something wrong.
The other game that kind of popped into my head a little bit was the 2018 SEC Championship, where I had a little bit of doubt. Well, can he get over that mental hump and beat that team? They crumble another lead to Alabama. So that was the second big Alabama game in Kirby's tenure, where I definitely had some doubts as to where the program was going if they couldn't win those big games. That's obviously gone now, but those were the SEC Championship 2018 and South Carolina 2019. Those were the two games that kind of had me turning my head a little bit.
Yeah, for me, it's different. I thought after the Texas game, I was like, that's a really bad loss.
Yeah, I didn't.
It's a bowl game.
I didn't see it
We
that
were
way.
texting
Just
about that the other night.
half the seniors
I
kind
didn't
of
see it.
abandoned the team.
Yeah, but
They
it
came
was
out flat early.
I'll tell you what. Now, I've not done a video about this yet, but I will. They learned a lot from that moment, and did it lead to this moment? I don't know, but you can pick up DAWGSTRUCTION. Check out the link below. They have not lost a bowl game since that game.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. The thing about that moment, which is really particularly important, was that Georgia, that Kirby and them took notes when they got back from New Orleans. I thought it was a really bad loss. Now, the Carolina loss was a bad loss, but it was not a terminal loss. And you know how I am about terminal and all this stuff. Nothing changed. They could. Would they, if they were undefeated going to the LSU game, did they go on to play in the playoff? I don't think they do, because I think Clemson and Notre Dame were in it. Is that right? And they were both undefeated or whatever. And you had Oklahoma. So would they have jumped Oklahoma after a loss to LSU? I don't think so. The Carolina loss that day was sort of one of those inexplicable things that happens in sports. They had a quarterback who was failing.
Yeah.
He was going backwards. They had injuries that were a real problem. And Jake Fromm had a bad day. He was going backwards, and he had a particularly bad day that day.
The receivers didn't help him out.
No, they did not.
They were flat, and it was a noon game when I think Kirby said after the fact they didn't warm up well. They weren't ready, and they haven't played like that since. They come ready to play, especially pregame. They're locked in. They weren't focused at that point.
You compare that performance with their performance at Auburn that year, or the way they played somewhat. The South Carolina game in 19 was not completely dissimilar to the A&M game in 19, in that the offense struggled so much. When you think about 19 and y'all are right. There was a lot of, can this guy do this or not at that moment? Because what had happened was he had picked Jake Fromm over Justin Fields, and Justin Fields was lighting it up, and Jake Fromm was going backwards.
He was bad in the Tech game.
He was bad.
Yeah.
He had picked the wrong offensive coordinator. I mean, Kirby had made some mistakes, for sure. And I, you know, the difference is that, and versus everybody else, I guess, in life is he's out there and 90,000 people see them lose. When we make mistakes, 90,000, well, in some cases 90,000 people do see us do that, but typically not. And they really had some issues with that team. This guy's gonna sideswipe us over here. It's rough out here in these streets. That was a bad day.
Yeah,
That was a bad day. And 18, after they lost to Alabama, I didn't really feel that way. I thought they were the better team for 3/4 of that game, and they let Alabama hang around. Rodrigo missing kicks against South Carolina hurt him, and the Alabama game hurt him. In the Alabama game in 18, Rodrigo, that took away their momentum completely.
they would have won the game if they would have 17.
Probably win the game, yeah.
Yeah, they definitely learned from that loss, Ryan. And
Talking about Carolina?
Yeah, and
what did they learn? What did they learn? I'm not
you
sure.
gotta come ready to play each and every time.
Gotcha.
And
I thought
there are no off weeks. I mean, we say that we go through the schedule and we say, oh, there's no way Missouri's going to beat them this year. Carolina, Tennessee, they're not ready. Florida, but you got to come prepared still, especially for those 11 a.m. sometime noon games. If you're not ready and you get punched in the mouth, you know, football's
But
football.
it was mistake after mistake from Fromm, and the
Tyler
fact.
Simmons.
Yeah, well, there were. I mean, it was not just Jake.
It was the same kid had the 3 interceptions, right?
Yeah,
Israel
Mukwamu.
yeah.
That guy.
But the pick six was terrible.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh, that was
That was the
was
worst
awful.
thing that
That
could have
was
happened.
And they just were flat. The stadium was flat.
The overtime, it was just that was a bizarre day.
It was a lot. I mean, South Carolina could not possibly have been more limited coming into that game offensively.
Will
Who
Muschamp,
stole that game?
he was bad at South Carolina, and that was easily his biggest win there, I think.
Will?
Yeah.
Well, when they beat,
Yeah.
yes, I agree with you. When they beat Michigan in the Outback Bowl or whatever, that was a big deal too. But those were the moments to me where I was like, man, you know, I particularly after Texas, because I was like, they did not come ready for this game.
And that goes back to coaching.
I
Absolutely.
think, yeah. And like, was it J.R. Reed? Was that
Yeah,
that him or was that the Baylor game?
Did not get drafted.
That was the Baylor game. See, they had learned their mistake from a year later. That to me shows that Kirby and them did understand how to change and how to get better. And it really probably pissed them off pretty good. But I tell you what, man, that Baylor win to me was a big deal. That was a top 10 matchup. They weren't sleepwalking.
They didn't play all that great
No,
early
they
on.
didn't. But Jake took the easy open man and
So this
got
George
it done.
Pickens guy is
George
pretty
Pickens.
good.
George Pickens game,
Let's
no
throw it to
doubt.
So
him.
you're saying the Texas game was your biggest doubt?
Yeah, because up until that moment,
If they play in
Well, I
the
was
regular,
smelling something, and here comes this guy behind us. What's happening back there?
what did he open up?
What
there?
is happening right
Always gotta
now?
grab 2 sandwiches, man.
Oh my
There's
gosh,
someone-
that's why I couldn't grab an extra sandwich. Ryan's got 5 of them back
Selfish
there.
Ryan
How
has
did it-
replaced Falcon Ryan.
What was that day where I took? Where was it that I took like 5 or 6 sandwiches?
This is
And
a
that could have been
championship game.
any particular game.
This is a championship game. You were within your right to do that night. But I want to say before I lose my train of thought with the smell of that fast food restaurant that the Texas game was, hey, maybe they have peaked, and this is like they're not quite what they were, and they weren't.
I always thought if they played in the regular season, full strength, Georgia wins that
probably.
game.
Yeah, probably.
It almost felt like they didn't want to be there after
didn't.
losing the 18 SEC title game to Alabama. A lot of them would have rather just gone home, had Christmas, and ended the season because they weren't there for the Sugar Bowl. That was one of the years where they were there to win it all, and they didn't have the team, obviously, to get it done. But it's so crazy how so much better they were in 21 than they were in 18.
Well, how much does they were a better team, generally speaking,
Yeah.
right? I mean, like,
In all aspects.
I love Jonathan Ledbetter, but you would take the D lineman in the 21 team over Ledbetter.
Yeah.
And that's saying something. I mean, Ledbetter was a pretty good college player.
Davin Bellamy had some big moments.
Well,
He's not playing on the
on
21 team, though. But
right.
yeah, I see what you're saying.
He was not on that
Right.
18 team, but like that's
DeAndre
kind of.
was the corner on that.
Yeah, but DeAndre had a pretty good year in 18, as I recall.
DeAndre Walker wouldn't have played on the 21 team.
He'd have played though, right?
Some.
A little bit.
Yeah, he would have been a rotational guy, but they were just so deep. They wouldn't have needed him or
But
some of the guys,
I do wonder. Sometimes this stuff is bullshit, but I do wonder how much their closeness as a team got them through 21. When they weren't challenged a lot though, y'all, in 21.
Yeah, the practices were harder than the games.
Part of that was because they were so good. I mean, that's a little part of
But
that.
they didn't. They have not. We have not seen one of those moments. Like, could the Tennessee game have been possibly in 21 been compared to Carolina at home in 19? I don't think so. Tennessee was a way better team in
and
20.
They beat the crap
and
out
they
of them.
just took them
On
to
the road,
woodshed, man. That
That's
was
just
a
how good
beating.
that 21 team was.
But they're not going to be that much worse this fall.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I have high faith in their success this year.
They're going to have to score more points. And guys are going to have to emerge on defense. Guys like MJ Sherman,
Yeah.
Xavier Sori, Small Munden, and especially some of the defensive linemen.
Can it be easy for them to score? Like Aaron and them, they could score easy, man. Like it was
I think
nuts.
That 12 offense was nuts.
That 12 offense was legit.
This offense should be sick. This offense really.
And that 12
should be
offense
sick.
did not have exceptional receivers. Would you say they did?
They had Malcolm Mitchell.
Malcolm definitely was a troublemaker for sure.
Yeah.
But they don't. I would put these guys up against those, and they'd fight them. I mean, Chris
80,
Conley.
Ladd.
I mean, they that leaves out the tight ends were just not there in 12 the way they are right
Now you
now.
have one of the best tight end rooms.
The best tight end
No, I'm
room.
saying-
But I feel
This
like
could be one
he
of the
just
best
was
ever.
not gonna. Kirby was not gonna let them go backwards. That Texas game was an important moment for them moving forward. I think the Carolina game was not the same mistake. I guess they both didn't really kind of want to be there, but Texas just beat them. South Carolina was aided by what Georgia did. I mean, Georgia.
Well, Georgia laid an egg that first quarter of the Sugar Bowl with the
Totally. Jake
punts,
Camarda,
and they
yeah.
played awful. They dug themselves in a giant hole there. And then Texas thought that was their Super Bowl. They thought they were back after beating the mighty Georgia Bulldogs, and both programs kind of went the other way.
But that's Texas' biggest win. Maybe the Oklahoma game at one point, but that's as big a win for Texas as they've had in 10 years.
Yeah. Oh, those people were having a good time.
And I mean, they should be good at football, but that's kind of what we were wondering. What stage? And there will still be stages when, like, the first one for me with Mark Richt, I think was in.
I know the moment I gave up on Mark Richt.
Five down there,
What was that
or
moment?
15 at Tennessee.
oh, definitely. By then, it was problematic.
I stayed with him, and I said after that game,
The
I said, he's gotta do it.
14 loss to Florida
And Tech.
was really, and then the Tech
That was-
thing was just really tricky there was no explanation for that.
Yeah.
I do think that Mark was closer to being let go than people realize after that Tech game.
Would they have gotten Kirby that year?
I believe they probably would have. And would he have been ready? I don't know. But then you're talking about a totally different dynamic if Kirby gets hired going into 15 versus going into
And he's got 3 years with Nick.
then
and Sony
you're
and
not
those guys,
probably
so.
getting Grayson Lambert. Then you're not. There's different things change. Well, maybe they would have gotten great. I don't know. But then you're not starting your season with Jacob Eason. I mean, a lot could have changed in all of this time. I don't know. It was a curious question, and I think people are still within their right to doubt what he does or has done and stuff like that.
We had people on YouTube hating on Kirby last year up until then. I mean, people always know more than the head coach.
Well,
right?
they're within their right to be critical.
Yeah.
But that was for me. It was a Texas game where I was like, man, I don't know what we're doing here. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
That was a bad loss. South Carolina, to me, they had the rest of the season to go.
Yeah.
And it just absorbed a bad loss.
Any doubts after the LSU game in Baton Rouge, where Jake didn't play well and people were screaming for Justin Fields?
Doubts about Jake Fromm. I had doubts about Jake Fromm, but never doubts that I would replace him as a starting quarterback in the 18 season. Because he would play really well at times in big moments
against Florida.
But 19, if you don't have Jake Fromm in 19, we're probably not having a lot of this discussion.
Yeah.
Because he went backwards so much. What was that?
Did he already have an eye at the next level? Because he left after that year.
Well,
I'm all thinking, dude, what are you
saying
doing?
to people, I could go back and write. I wrote it after the 18 season that 19 was probably Jake Fromm's last season in Georgia. And do you recall that article?
I'm sure I did.
Yes, of course.
Right. Yeah, of course.
And people were like, "What are you talking about? This guy's going to he's a lifer and all this." I'm like, "No, he's leaving," and he did. And
for him, he should have stayed another year.
well,
Was it going to get better?
Look, that's kind of my point. Was he going to get better? The answer to that was no.
He was getting worse.
Is Stetson's best season at Georgia better than Jake Fromm's best season at Georgia? I mean, his 18 was Fromm's best season, and it was a pretty good one. Was Stetson's 2021 better than his 18?
I would say yeah.
Stetson's was better in 21?
Yeah.
That's really going to hurt a lot of people's feelings.
I don't think it really should, but I think that's the right answer.
We've come to a stop. All right.
Yeah.